Good evening and welcome to the June 25th, 2013 meeting of the Town of Wareham Board of Selectmen and Sewer Commissioners. May we have the roll call, please?
Selectman Whiteside, Selectman Titlebaum, Selectman Slavin are present. Town Administrator Derek Sullivan, Town Council Rich Bowen.
Okay. Next item.
Announcements. Judy, you have any announcements?
It's hot.
We know it's hot.
I don't think that's news to anyone.
That's it? Okay. I have just a few today. We had sent out a proclamation to the City of Boston for Boston Strong, which we announced, I think, about a month or so ago. We received back a letter from Thomas Menino, Mayor of Boston. It starts off with their logo, "Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all sins." And the note back from the mayor is, "Thank you for your most recent expiration of kindness. In the weeks following the Boston Marathon tragedy, we have received many words of encouragement, offers of help, and donations to the One Fund Boston. The outpouring of support gives us strength to mourn, to rebuild, and to push forward. We are Boston, a city with the courage, compassion, and strength that knows no bounds. On behalf of the people of Boston, thank you for your support." Wareham Historical Society on July 4th has the annual Antiques Fair. I believe it starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. They'll also have food at the they'll have food at the Congregational Hall, and it'll last till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The Celebration 2014 had a yard sale this past Saturday. It was quite successful, and they're planning another one for July. Stay tuned for an actual date. That's all I have.
Just briefly, today at 5 o'clock, the appointing authority for the Finance Committee met. Pursuant to the charter, that appointing authority consists of the town moderator, Claire Smith, the chair of the FinCom Committee, Donna Bronk, and myself as the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. We interviewed 3 applicants for the FinCom and appointed all 3 by unanimous 3-0-0 votes. The new members of the FinCom beginning July 1st will be Joan Fonts, Marilyn Jordan, and David Hurd. We'd like to thank these people for stepping up and volunteering to serve on one of the most important boards in our town. Thank you. Next, please.
We have a meeting with Powers and Sullivan, the town's auditors.
No, we have citizens' participation.
Oh, I keep missing that one. Jerry, you didn't catch it that time.
We have citizens. Ma'am, come forward, please.
Remember me?
Yes, we do.
Well, I'm back.
Dunkin' Donuts?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now you're gonna take the sticky out? Why here?
Well, please identify yourself and where you are first.
I'm Rosario Lobel. I live in 3D J Lane. I am complaining.
Take the microphone.
I am complaining about that for the last 7.5 years. And partly I'm gonna have to take the speaker out myself because you guys don't. 4 months, nice and quiet. Last 2 weeks, whoop! Why I had to listen to them? I have enough listen to the car parking. I have enough slamming the door. I have enough listen to people talking and screaming. I don't need to hear Dunkin' Donuts too, from 5 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock in the night. That is a residential and not a commercial. So I see myself, you guys should take the speaker out. Done.
Did you say it was okay for 4 months and then got loud all of a sudden again?
Just like happened 2-3 years ago. My husband met one of the Tedeschi, the owner, and he talked to him, and the speaker went down for a while. Later, the speaker went right up. Happened to you guys. You guys talked to them. The speaker went low. Now going right up. Why I had to suffer?
Okay. Chairman Titlebaum?
8 years. 8 years.
If it's okay with you, I think it would be appropriate if we would ask our new code enforcement officer, etc., since we have, everybody knows we have a new director of inspectional services, full hires in. If we could have David take a look.
Remove the speaker, please. And
go down and see if Bob, sorry, it was David. Bob to go look and visit with our resident and also see what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. We have a new Director of Inspectional Services, ma'am. This person is also the Town of Wareham Code Enforcement Officer. and to the extent that what you're talking about is a noise complaint,
Yep.
he would have jurisdiction over that. So we're going.
Where
Mr.
did
Sullivan is going to ask him to look into the level of noise down there.
We did that a while ago, and it quiet for 4 months and come right up, right up. I don't think, it's residential, okay? So you guys screwed up giving to them the permit to do it. Now I am the one I suffering, nobody else. You guys sit down your porch, have a beer, have a cup of drink, have whatever without no noise. I cannot get up and outside. I would outside the weekend painting my house, painting the shed. It's terrible. Why I should listen to them?
Okay, we're going to ask Mr. Sullivan to go get your information, ma'am.
Yeah, he have my information, all right. Okay. So you guys gonna take the speaker out, or what? Or I have to come back next month?
We're gonna try and see what we can do for you.
The same a few
Yeah.
months ago. Then gonna take it down, and later on gonna go right up, and I have to come back here.
I understand.
I go
We-
take it down, and you don't gonna like it.
We understand.
Don't gonna like it, believe me. Sorry.
Derek, if you... Yeah.
Oh.
Have her call me with this noise. All right.
Come forward, please.
Hi, my name is Joe Mulcairn, Precinct 2, and I just want to, I'm read the agenda for tonight, and also to bring back a couple of weeks ago, you people had a discussion about sign bylaws, and I think Mr. Holmes said that we don't have a bylaw, and I looked it up in the books, and we do have a bylaw in regards to signage.
We do. I think Mr. Holmes perhaps misunderstood. What this is an attempt to revise, going forward, the sign bylaw to reflect more modern conditions. I think our sign bylaw, just if I remember that discussion correctly, it dates back to the
it's one
80s,
page.
Yeah.
and there isn't much to it,
Yes, I know, I understand
which
that.
I'm sure you found in your research.
Yes, just going around town, I'm just curious because there's so many people putting signs on the streets and the sidewalks and everywhere else, and who enforces this rule to get these things off the telephone poles and on public property?
The zoning officer, code enforcement officer,
Then-
which we did not have in place for a while, if you remember.
Yeah,
All this
I
happened.
understand, yeah.
And if we will have public meetings on the sign bylaw, that's when the process of doing all these issues are taken care of in the new sign bylaw.
Okay,
With
very good.
regard to telephone poles, Mr. Mulcairn,
We don't own them.
we don't own those, so we don't have municipal utilities in town. We have, N-Star, whatnot.
Well, it's-
So that's really their responsibility to remove the signs
To
from the
remove,
poles.
okay.
I suppose one could certainly call them. There has been a proliferation of them.
Yeah,
You're right.
Okay.
There's a bunch of them saying, call this number to sell your house for cash, and this, that, and the other
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
There's
yeah, exactly.
any number of different flavors of sign on telephone poles. I
Okay.
agree they're unattractive.
Okay, and my next question, I just noticed on the thing here, down here in section 9, discussion to whether to form a wind study committee. I was on a wind study committee a little over a year ago, and I don't know, was that disbanded, that committee?
That committee was strictly put together to come back with a report on the effects of the citizens with wind power.
Okay.
It wasn't really a wind study committee per se.
Yeah.
It was,
Okay, so there's...
you know what it was.
We're going to form something, because I was surprised that...
One of the selectmen has an interest in it, so it's been put on the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Gerald Barrels, and I'm District Fulton is 4, Deacons. What I want to do, I just want to compliment whoever got that committee on disability because they had a meeting for the first time in over, 3 years or when it was formed, and it was a good meeting, and whoever did it, they have a new chairman, and I just want to congratulate whoever did it, and I thank you all for it.
I think Mr. Malkern became a new member of that committee. Did you not?
Yes.
And I believe
part of
I believe he's the chairman
Yeah.
because I went.
Yeah, because things changed around,
Yeah.
so
Thank
you can turn around and thank Joe.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Next item, please.
Now we have meeting with Powers and Sullivan.
Good evening.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much for having me tonight. We're
Thank you
here
for
to
coming.
discuss the fiscal 2012 audit reports. And as we know, those are made up of both your financial statements, the management letter, and the schedule of expenditures of federal award programs. I'd like to start with the schedule of federal award programs, which is kind of the easiest one of them. The town in fiscal 12 spent approximately $5.6 million worth of federal award programs, received unqualified opinions on that report. We had 2 minor compliance findings on 2 of the grants that we had to look at. Based on what we refer to as our phase 1, our preliminary work for fiscal 13, we've been able to solidify that one of those compliance findings has already been resolved. We have positive affirmation that the other one is being worked on, and we will test for that when we come back to conduct the audit in a few months. That's really the gist of that report. It's a clean report, a couple of minor compliance findings, won't affect your funding. Again, 1 out of 2 has already been fixed, and we expect the other to be wrapped up by the time we come back. Next, we have both the management letter and the financial statements. And what I'd like to do is maybe something a little bit different. I don't want to go through page by page of the management letter and the financial statements unless certainly there's any way that the board wants it and there's any specific questions, we'll address anything that you want. But what I'd like to do is, both from your audit firm standpoint and the Department of Revenue standpoint, some of the biggest issues or areas of concern that are always looked at are the health insurance trust and the general fund. Those are kind of the primary areas that are focused on both when your audit is being conducted and when the Department of Revenue is looking at all the town accountant submissions each year and that type of thing. So I'd like to give some financial highlights on the financial statements, move into the management letter, which is going to embrace a discussion on the health trust, which is going to bring some other financial issues into it, and then by all means we can answer any more specific questions that anybody might have. The financial statements for the community this year, again, happy to say this is the 2nd year in a row now that we have received an unqualified opinion on our financial statements. The budgetary statement is essentially what the town...
Before we go any further, would you explain what an unqualified statement, so
Yes.
the audience, everybody understands what we're talking about?
An unqualified opinion is essentially the best that the town can receive. That means that when your auditors came in to audit your books and records, everything was available, reconciliations had been occurring, information that was requested supporting documentation to the various balances within your ledger was received timely and it was accurate. In fiscal 2009 and fiscal 10, under some of the previous accounting officers at the time, you know, we weren't able, what we call scope limitations. There were some areas that we could not obtain substantial evidential matter to opine on. Cash had not been reconciled and that type of thing. In speaking with the administration this week, in preparation for tonight, your cash for fiscal 13 is reconciled up and through April. Receivables are reconciled through March. Another area we'll see once we get into the management letter, there's been a substantial amount of journal entries from departments over the years. They have diminished. I think there's probably still too many, but they're diminishing. They're now at least coming in to the accounting office timely. What we've seen, say 9, 10, and even some of 11, all of a sudden June would come around and 300 journal entries from various departments for corrections would occur. it's my understanding that that's not occurring anymore. Some of this we'll have to substantiate when we come back to do, the final aspect of the fiscal 13 audit, but we are seeing definite positive trends occurring within the financial operations and the various financial departments of the town. So again, I mentioned with the unqualified opinion. On the budgetary statement for the general fund, which is kind of really what the town works from, your budgeting, that type of thing, we had a positive surplus this year of about $1.7 million that went to the bottom line. Now, I'd like to just explain that a little bit, because $800,000 of that really related to the raising of prior year snow and ice and some other deficits, as well as, I don't want to talk too much about the health trust now because we'll get into it momentarily in the management letter, but because for fiscal 12 our appropriation had been reduced for the health trust by about $1 million from the previous fiscal year, that really kind of also impacted, our profit and loss in that surplus. And ultimately, we, as we all know, and the board voted, when the town's free cash was certified, in discussing it with the town administrator, we concurred with him that it was a prudent and a good idea to utilize and earmark that free cash to go into your health insurance trust fund. And we'll look more at that in momentarily. For your financial statements, again, this was your second year of the implementation of GASB 54, which breaks out on your fund-based statement to different categories so that the readers can understand the level of constraint on your funds. Included in that is the stabilization fund, in which there was a $150,000 transfer voted into your stabilization fund in fiscal 13, which brought it to a balance of, fiscal 12, sorry, brought it up to $418,000 as of June 30th, which is great. So we're going in the right direction. And I understand that the board, in working with the town administrator, has been working on a policy that, based on where our free cash number comes in each year, X percent will be allocated and earmarked for our stabilization fund to start building those reserves. That's a great policy as well. Your general fund on what we call a GAAP basis was at about $2.8 million, which is slightly higher than budgetary just because of some GAAP entries. Again, the important part to keep in mind, because of GASB 54, that includes your stabilization fund, and as of June 12, it includes the free cash that was then earmarked to go into the health trust. So it's slightly inflated because we know we've already used some of those dollars for fiscal 13 going over to the health trust. But on the collecting side, we've seen strong collections over the last couple of years. Fiscal 11, I believe, brought in about $450,000 worth of tax lien collections. We had about $540,000 of collections, about $100,000 increase for fiscal 12, which is great. So your treasurer collector is out there trying to collect delinquent taxes, which is excellent. Again, we mentioned the stabilization fund was up to the $418,000. And one of the big liabilities that we're all always talking about is your other post-employment benefits. That liability on your financials as of June 30th is now $17.3 million. That's going to change in a few years. We're all kind of working out some of the newer GASBs, 67, 68, 69. They're working on not only just representing the liability on your books of what we have not paid in that particular year, but the actuarial liability as well. So it's not going to be just for the town of Wareham. For all Massachusetts communities, that liability will probably need to be on your books in another 2 fiscal years. So we're all kind of working out the logistics of that, and I don't want to bore you with the details now because they're being worked out by both the GASB and accounting firms. In a nutshell, those are some of the highlights of the financials, and I think if we move to the final report, the management letter, it's also going to bring in some other financial highlights that we can talk about as far as the financial statements. Again, the management letter, if you strictly look at the table of contents, there's quite a few comments in there. Some reoccurring, some new, some material weaknesses. What I could say to that is, based on the timing of the way, if we started, say, fiscal 09, when some of the prior accounting issues that occurred and caused some extra work for both administration and finance as well as your accounting firm, we had a hole in the town accountant's office of not having a town accountant. Then we had some consultants in for a while. We then had another town accountant that maybe only lasted a few months. What we're seeing now, and when we came in May for our phase 1 work for this year's audit, there's now stability in your town accountant's office. There's stability in your town administrator's office. You are working towards a finance director position, and we've noted over the past few years that we feel there's always been stability within your treasurer's office. What we saw in our phase 1 of our audit, as we call it, our preliminary work, is that although there's still a lot of comments in here, clearly they're not going to go away overnight, because that takes not only a lot of effort and coordination amongst your departments, which that was hard to accomplish when we had either no town accountant or town accountants that were here for part of the year and then another one part of the year. Now what we're seeing, again, based on our phase 1 work, was there's now a synergy occurring between your financial offices. People are working together, reconciliations are occurring, dialogue is occurring between your financial offices that wasn't occurring before. So there's many items in this management letter that, based on our preliminary, now again, we have to come out and do the final phase of our audit and really, kick the tires, if you will. But based on what we're seeing, I would expect quite a few of these comments to be resolved for fiscal 13. That is our gut feeling at this point, based on working with your various departments at this time. Now, the key, or what I feel is the most important comment, one of the most important comment that highlights the material weakness, is in relation to the health trust. So the health trust, we know, had been an issue, is an issue for the Department of Revenue. Anytime there's ever correspondence with the Department of Revenue, either with the town or with your audit firm, one of the first things they ask about is, where's the health trust? How is the health trust? Well, in the management letter, we had included a chart that just showed a trend of, because essentially, I know there's been some negotiations going fiscal 14 and forward, where we're now moving to a 70-30 split for most of the health insurances. It had historically been at 75-25. So in a perfect world, there should always be a 75-25 split within the remaining fund balance of that fund, 75 being employer, 25 being employee. Over the last couple of years, there's been a couple of health insurance holidays offered that I know in discussions with the previous town administration that both the Department of Revenue and ourselves, Powers and Sullivan, had some apprehension whether that should occur, whether that was the right way to go about it, and or if it was going to occur that way, the recommendation was that it be an employee holiday, not necessarily, or not include an employer holiday. Unfortunately, the way it occurred was that it ended up being both employer and employee, and at the end of fiscal 12, we had a positive fund balance in the fund of just over $650,000. However, when you did the accounting, the breakout of that, the town was actually in a deficit position of $180,000, and the employees had $837,000 to be exact. In a perfect world, for your 75-25 split, the town should have had, let's call it, a $2.4 million balance in fund balance at that point in time. Good decision, I think, to allocate and earmark our free cash to the fund. Realistically, if we just stay static for a moment as of July 1, $1.3 million into the fund, we're still really, without doing anything else, we're still $1.4 million short to just make ourselves whole for that 75-25. In looking at the current, I spoke with the town accountant this week and just got a feel for what's occurring within that fund thus far this fiscal year. Our contributions are being made. The appropriation for the general fund is clearly up about $1.5 million from fiscal 12, which is great. However, it's probably still not enough to get you to the proper allocation at the end of the fiscal year. The earmarking of the free cash is definitely going to help. However, the other thing that we're seeing, looking at the current set of financials for the health trust, is the expenditures again are up about $1.5 million thus far over fiscal 12. Don't know what the next month will bring, how many bills are still left to pay. So we'll have to do an analysis again with the town of that fund to determine where the breakout falls as of the end of fiscal 13. It is something by statute under Mass General Law that the town should be looking into each year to see, because really the law requires the town to rebalance that fund every year if our proper allocations are not being met. So we know that hasn't occurred. We've been working with the town to maybe work on some detail level within the general ledger that'll help to identify when issues are occurring more timely. In speaking with your town administrator, in working with group benefit strategies, the appropriation for fiscal 13 on the town side has been raised to about 6.7, which is great. That's pretty much where you should be. I think it's going to depend a lot on the actual claims, how fiscal 13 ends and how fiscal 14 starts, whether that in itself can help get you up to the right split for employer-employee, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. I know in speaking with your town administrator, you've been working on the various splits as union negotiations come up. What we'll need to do as of the end of fiscal 12 is fiscal 13 is get a feel for where that percentage lies. Are we closer to the 75-25 at that point, and where are we at? In discussing it with your town administrator, there are options that could potentially be an employee-only holiday, maybe. There are different options based on what we see at the end of fiscal 12 and or 13, how it tracks, that we can kind of all work together to think what might be the best way to get us going forward to the, the proper allocation, and so that the Department of Revenue is not always honing in, because what's going to happen this year at the end of fiscal 13, should those actual claims, let's say the next few weeks in June and maybe you're 15 days into July, should those claims come in, quite heavily, let's say, and the level goes up, if it potentially, because there's only, based on what I saw, we're roughly pretty flatlined for the fiscal year, a little under 600 in cash right now in that fund. Should the claim level throw you into a deficit, the only reason the town was not required to raise the 183 deficit you had last year was because the Department of Revenue took into account the employee side, said, okay, in total we're in the black, we're not going to make you raise it. Should the claims come in higher than anticipated over the next month, that is something I know with the recent budget cuts that have had to be made and such, that we're probably not anticipating having to raise on the 14 recap. Now, I don't know if that's going to occur. We're close. Yes, we're close to the end of the fiscal year as well. It could cut ourselves very close this year, in which hopefully within fiscal 14, with the increased appropriations, hopefully our claims level off a bit, and that can help us get to, where our percentages should be. But it is something that we need to pay close attention to and work towards. Most of the other comments in here, both the material weaknesses as well as what we call the other matters, they're all important, or else we wouldn't have put them into the management letter. However, clearly the health trust rises to being very important in the Department of Revenue's eyes, which last year, the audit financial statements had to be completed before they would certify your tax rate. So both your audit team as well as your financial team worked really hard together to get those financials done and to the Department of Revenue so that your tax rate can be approved on time. So not making light of all the other comments, but without going into detail for each and every one, what I kind of said up front was that we've really seen a difference in the way the departments are working together. And in order for all these other matters to start being addressed, because they're mostly reconciliation issues, information flow issues, you needed to develop that stability within your financial departments, as well as the departments now working and communicating together to have the reconciliation processes become standard operating procedure, which based on what we see, they're happening timely. Unreconciling items on those recs are dropping off, are diminishing. So we're seeing people really working together. And in our eyes, that's what's going to start to occur to have a lot of these other matters start dropping off. So without beating up each and every point, that's kind of an overview. We think it's a good move that you've allocated, in summary, to your free cash to the health trust. You've been working on your percentage negotiations on the health payments with the unions. That's going to help as well. Keeping an eye on it, watching the claim levels is going to help that. And or again, just the fact that all your financial departments are now working together, reconciliations are occurring. We don't have an issue with cash right now. When we looked at it in preliminary, we were here in early May, things were up to date. Reconciliations were readily available for us to see. That has not occurred in fiscal 9, 10, really most of 11, to be honest with you, as well. So this is a real big step in the right direction. And from our eyes, this is what's needed for everyone to work together to start focusing on the other issues in the management letter, which also then, as far as your budget goes and the statements, allows, once the time is there, because once reconciliations are occurring on a standard operating procedure, they're occurring monthly and timely, they don't take a whole lot of time, quite frankly, and it allows your financial team to then broaden their horizon, start looking at different operations. Where can we help to control costs? How can we maybe level fund, maybe increase our budget depending on how everything goes, or do the best we can for our residents without cutting services and that type of thing, which, I know we had a little of that going into fiscal 14. But we really see a lot coming together, and we really think 14 audit is going to, one, go much smoother, which is simply a positive affirmation for the way your financial teams are working together, because we can't do it alone. It's the information that comes from the town. So in summary, we think we're seeing a lot of progress going forward. We think we should see a lot of these close out within fiscal 14. And we've seen a lot of good working together within your various departments, and the information flow that we received in our early May timeframe really substantiated that, and that was great. And so that was in sort of summary. I didn't want to kind of take too much time, but I'm more than happy to drill down to anything that you might have.
Questions from the board?
Comments?
Yes.
For 23 years, I had a love-hate relationship with auditors because I was a commercial banker. So I am pleased to hear that it is an unqualified position. It is heartening to hear positive comments from people who are paid to be pessimists. And auditors are paid to be pessimists. You are paid to find the problems.
Skepticism is number one, absolutely.
Right. So one of the things that very much bothered me about the draft letter that we're really discussing is that it continued to say, as noted in previous audits, as noted in previous audits. I would have fired people if I had read that as a commercial banker. In fact, I did fire people for not getting things done. I
understand that point of view.
So kudos to Mr. Sullivan and the team that he's put together for making you sort of say a whole lot of positive things. There's some huge negatives, and I don't want to not acknowledge that there are still huge negatives.
Agreed.
But some of these comments were outrageous. As noted in previous audits, should never, ever appear more than once. Ever. Not ever.
If I may.
Go ahead.
I completely agree with everything you've just said. And as an audit firm, we see various clients and situations that cause some comments to be reiterated year after year. Sometimes, I think for Wareham, it was more so the fact that in 9 and 10, we had a lot of issues within the accounting office that caused extra projects to occur, just in order to be able to, in fiscal 11, be able to issue an unqualified opinion. As Derek knows, we all worked together many hours of a year and a half time to really, and again, we mentioned before that we had a lot of confidence in your treasurer's office, and they reconcile their cash and their debt, and that allowed us to have a good, stable starting point to then back in to what might have occurred on the accounting records and get to a good starting point. Now, because of all of that, the timing may have prolonged than maybe a normal audit, an exit conference, and discussion of how can we make it better in the next fiscal year. So, from the town standpoint, yes, sometimes it occurred because of the timing of such, we were already deep into the next fiscal year and next, so in some ways it was hard to correct right away in that next fiscal year. And at the same time, we mentioned that there was a consultant's in, there was a hole in the office, there was a town accountant that lasted
Without-
2 to 4 months.
Without timely records, you can do nothing.
Agreed. Completely
And that
agreed.
that is
And
really what Mr. Sullivan has directed his staff to work on. And I congratulate him and the staff for having really brought us out of the slime. This is dreadful. And what I hear you say is, it's not bad, it's getting better. So for a pessimist to say that,
I agree.
Right
So
on.
I didn't want to harp on each and every comment here that would, as you suggest, bring up negatives that have been here for a few fiscal years now. We wanted to more so have that positive information for your administration and your financial teams, where we're seeing stability, we're seeing working together, we're seeing, and without any of that, as an auditor, I don't feel any of this is going to go away. You have to have that synergy, that working together, that communication, understanding of what each party and each department needs. We're seeing that starting to occur. And our testing and our preliminary inquiries in May solidified that. And so that was more of the message that I wanted to project and show that our opinions and our gut tells us that when we get back out here for the final phase of our audit, that there should be much more positive closure of some of these comments come fiscal 14, the end of fiscal 14.
the other thing I'd like to say is that we won't be having a 9-month audit. It will be in a timely fashion.
I would expect so, based on what we saw in our phase 1, and again, the timeliness of our requests, the timeliness of being able to work with your town accounting office, your treasurer's office, your administrator's office, the information, the answers to our questions. You know, for us as an auditor, as you mentioned up front, professional skepticism, that's number one for us. Whether it's an A client, a client that can never get us in, whatever it is, we have to be skeptical, and that's just the nature of our business. When we go into an office and we ask for certain information, and it's readily available, oh, here's that reconciliation right here. We know it's occurring timely. We can then see 4 months back. When we have to come in and ask for a reconciliation or any sort of substantiating information to any balance that we're looking at, and it takes a week to get us that information, that tells me, are they spending the night putting it all together? So that's maybe what we saw back in 9 and 10. That is not what we saw when we were here in May. So I cannot comment 100% on what we are going to see when we get back out here in the fall for fiscal 13, because we still have to get all the detail and ask the questions. But based on our preliminary questions and answers and information flow, far superior than years past. Far superior than years past.
That really is what needs to be spread out to the public.
I
Far
think
superior to years past.
I think so.
Far superior.
I'm not too concerned about the past anymore. We can't fix any of that. My concern is that on the healthcare trust fund, it's been an ongoing issue about keeping the percentages where they are, because it seems to be internally hard to control that. I believe Mr. Sullivan had some discussions about a possibility of a different plan down the line, which we would no longer having to maintain a self-insured trust fund, which I think is probably a long-term solution, because I don't think we're ever going to be perfectly 75-25, just because of the way the system works and how it goes forward. So I'm hoping that particular change down the line takes care of that issue. The other issue we've had right along has constantly been internal controls, checks and balances, etc., which have kind of slid a little bit. And these are the areas that I'm hoping, that the audit firm has suggestions as well. There's a fine line what you can do and can't do, which people don't realize. You're not really allowed to go a certain distance in.
Correct.
We have an audit committee. Again, they just look at the audit, make recommendations. They don't do what people think they do either. What I'd like to see from the audit firm is a serious look at our VADAR system looking 5 years down the road, because I think we're at a point in time where our accounting system is probably inadequate to do the job that's necessary, and I think it's causing as much of the problem as anything else as of today. Unfortunately, to go into a whole new operating system is a very large expense, which has to be budgeted in, and it's obviously not in the budget for 2014. And as you know, the town is so tight financially, but I believe we're going to have to look at a complete overhaul of what we do. And I'm hoping the audit firm will participate in that particular
We
piece.
can certainly help with that. Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, every system has its limit. Every general ledger package has its limitations, has its strong points. Currently the town is using VADAR. It does work well. It does have its limitations, just like any other one out there. I think maybe what we can do is have a couple of meetings to discuss what are the attributes that the town would really like to see change, and we can sort of work from there to, I see a lot of VADAR, we see a lot of the other systems as well throughout our communities, so we can help with this one's strong on this aspect, here it's a little weaker, and we can kind of work together to maybe hope to help guide the town maybe towards a system, if that's really the way you're looking to go, that might help with some of the shortcomings you feel the VADAR system has.
Yeah. I think it will allow us to have more timely reports. Income really has to be on a quarterly basis, just because of the way the income flows into the town. But on an expense basis, ideally we should have books closed really a couple of days after the end of each month. I would say by the 10th to 12th of the following month, we should have expense statements to us.
Right.
And I just believe that the VADAR system can't handle the volume of entries and what we have in town as of today even. And it's to the point now that we've outgrown the system. That's my concern.
Sure, I can clearly make a note of that, and when we come back, we can talk with administration and kind of see what we're seeing as we go through the audit, as well as bring that to the next level and kind of, as you suggest, talk it out and help to think what might be a viable solution 5 years, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, whatever it might be. Most definitely.
Thank you, Craig.
I would just echo what Mr. Slavin said. I've heard several of the FinCom members tell us that the VADAR system, for a municipality of our size and complexity, may not represent a long-term answer any longer. It's difficult for us to sit here and go over budgets, for example, try to figure out where we stand month to month if we're constantly a couple months behind. And it makes it hard for us to exercise our budget oversight task. And it makes it hard for Mr. Sullivan to get us that information. It makes it hard for the accounting office to develop the information in the first place. But as Mr. Slavin notes, changing it wholesale is an expense we can't afford either. So perhaps going forward, if you have such meetings, you could look with some specificity at what we have in terms of VADAR, what can be done to improve it. If it's running at its peak efficiency as a package for us now, or whether it can be improved, or whether long-term we should be looking in another direction. That would be very helpful.
Right, thank you. No, we could definitely assist with that. And the one other comment that I would make is we could also look at some of the other attributes that feed into the system. The timeliness from departments to the accounting. There could be some other attributes that could be changed or enhanced that could make the VADAR system work quite well for the town. So I can't sit here and say, oh yes, it's your VADAR, because I see VADAR work well in many communities. I'm not a salesman for any of the general ledger packages. But what I'm trying to say is we can help to assist and look at the various attributes that are causing the delay in reporting and try to hone in on Is it Vadar? Is it some other processes that we can help strengthen? But by all means, we could assist with that.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan, do you have any comments?
I just appreciate Mr. Peacock coming down and the amount of work that they've done in the town. You know, they are professional pessimists, and we don't get a free ride, but they work with us to really make sure that the decisions we're making, we run it by them, and that's what I've appreciated, that they've been able to be a sounding board and help out with some of the decisions. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, thank you. And to that, all I'd like to say is, we look at ourselves as not only your auditors, but a member of your financial team. So we're there for you 24/7. As you know, call with anything and everything. We're here to work with the town and to assist the town. As Mr. Slavin mentioned, there are limitations on certain things that we can do, and we'll always remain independent. But yes, we're always open for questions and the assisting wherever available.
Thank you.
Selectman Slavin?
The management letter, is that still a draft, or is that a final now?
It is final, but I was hoping after this meeting here, I'll be in the office later this week for both the management letter and the federal report. I was hoping to have those bound up and sent out to the town.
Okay, then I would suggest that if the office can schedule for July 9th on the agenda, so we can actually accept the management letter by vote.
Okay. So if I may ask, would you like us to hold off until July 9th to finalize them? Okay, so have them issued so that you have them for July. Very good.
We want to try and have a full board.
I can have them bound up by the end of the week. You'll have them early next week.
Yeah, we would like to have a full board for that vote.
Okay.
To the extent that people aren't here tonight, they can certainly watch the tape of this meeting. I think this will go a long way to explaining the past, the present, and hopefully the future.
Very good. Excellent.
So-
Yes. So in summary, I'll have those bound at the end of the week. I'll have them sent to Derek. He'll have them at the beginning of the week. And please, if any other questions do come up for fiscal 12 before we're out for 13, as always, I think you all know how to get a hold of us at this point. We're always available and open.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming in tonight. We
Thank you.
appreciate the time.
Thank you all very much.
I hate to hold you up, correct, but I know the board had questions about the water pollution control facility.
Yeah.
Yes,
And,
thanks for bringing that
I
up.
think while you're here, that would be fantastic.
So, if I may, based on conversations with Mr. Sullivan, what he had mentioned is that this water pollution control facility is trying to determine and looking at their balance sheet of maybe what makes up the retained earnings. Are there reserved funds? Is it all what we'd call unreserved and available? And we're contemplating maybe a potential project to kind of do a little audit of the water pollution to get a feel for, is their balance sheet tight, if you will? Are the numbers, is there integrity in the figures? And in discussing that in my office, what I would suggest is that is definitely something that we can do. Obviously, it's outside of the scope of the normal audit. It'll take a little bit of time, but currently on your financials, the Water Pollution Control Facility Fund, in a nutshell, is made up of both your operating fund and the capital fund. Your operating, so currently, if you look at your retained earnings, GAAP, the reservations are more important for you all internally and budgetarily. GAAP does not require those reservations to be made on the full accrual, what we call business-type financial statements. However, the operations of your operating fund since inception of the water pollution as an enterprise fund would essentially be the net of revenues and expenses that have occurred. The important part, or it's all important, but the most important part in thinking about reservations is going to be looking at that capital fund. The capital fund could be made up of bond proceeds, which would have restrictions if that project has ended and there's still some cash left. There could be some grants that also funded projects. There could be some articles that were voted with retained earnings in which, if those are the easy ones, because it was simply water pollution's funds. So if those projects have been completed, those can be just closed out and right back to your, what we'll call unreserved fund balance, unreserved retained earnings of that fund. So we see this as very similar to what occurred back in the end of '08, beginning of '09 for the Health Insurance Trust when we first started working with the town, in order to really give a black and white answer that here's what your retained earnings is made up of, here's what we feel the reservations at this time should be. It would really take looking from the water pollution's inception, following through all the various capital articles, understanding their funding sources, were they completely spent, was there any residual, and how that makeup is essentially what that makeup is made up of at this point in time, and that would help us back into what any reservations or what the retained earnings unassigned should be in that fund. By all means, that is something we can help with. We can extend our procedures a bit when we come out for the fiscal 13 audit to see if maybe we can find a more efficient way to do that. But really to give a solid report that says of the X millions of dollars, because again, when you're looking at your financial statements for the water pollution control, remember those are now on your full accrual basis. They're inclusive of your long-term debt, your compensated absences, your bonds and notes, which are not maintained in the water pollution fund within the general ledger. So there's some stuff in there that makes the retained earnings look a little high or low depending on the relationship between your assets and long-term debt, that type of thing. So there's clearly some work that would need to be done there to be able to figure out the balance sheet of the water pollution control facility and the retained earnings and what's necessary there, and any reservations that are still should be there and which would need to be released, or if they're bond proceeds, we know those need to be used for like projects, that type of thing. So in a nutshell, I would suggest that it's absolutely a project that can be done. We would need to work with the town, the water pollution control financial team themselves, and it's something that will, it'll take a little bit of time because there's a lot of digging there that has to be done. It's probably not an answer that will occur overnight because, again, there's probably years of activity that needs to be looked at, but it should be somewhat straightforward as long as the records are available within the water pollution control facility and their financial records. But by all means, it's most definitely something that we could assist the town and the water pollution control facility with.
Now you make me laugh. Of course you can. It really is a forensic audit. Because what you're talking about is going back to day one. And when you talk about funding for municipalities, it's not like your checkbook or mine or your debit card or mine. It's just not done the same way. So municipal accounting is a real pain in the neck to learn. It's also more difficult to understand. It's not just, here's $10, I just spent $10. It doesn't work that way. So it's imperative that we have the correct figures for the water pollution control. I mean, I've made that clear before, so.
Yeah.
Most likely we'll have, if politics allow, we'll have new sewer commissioners in probably a year plus, maybe a year and a half. So one of the thoughts where we wanted to make sure that when we turned everything over, everything was basically fairly clean and simple, understandable. We have issues of money that's been prepaid, which we can't really prepay off our bonds and everything the way it's set up. So we want to make sure what we have in the retained earnings reserve account, money that's sitting there, it belongs there to pay off the debt that's up there. We have just other issues where there's money in there. We're not sure, it might be what I would call, it's a bad term right now, we'll call it free cash in the retained earnings, which you can have. The other piece is the EDU rate that we set. We basically, I believe the way we do the EDU rate really is looking at all the costs, not the revenue, and coming up with an EDU rate. Well, there's a lot more involved in an EDU rate than the costs. You have depreciation, which we don't use in municipal accounting the same way, but the bottom line is that depreciation is there to basically replace your capital goods as they wear out. We don't provide for any of that. We don't provide for any real catastrophe. So in setting EDU rates, we're setting rates that are I'm going to say that, you know, if I could slap the back of my pocket and come up with a number, and that's about as close as they get. The rate used to be up over $900 at one time. There was complaints
Really?
about it. Yeah. And they
Okay.
went back to, like, they wanted to have it at $300. They ended up at about $590 because they were charging in different parts of the town's expenses in way back. They were
Okay.
billing in different departments' costs. And it got reduced down, but I don't believe anybody really has come up with a rate that's accurate to what
Accurate.
it should be.
You know, and my understanding too is that it hasn't changed for fiscal 13. From 12, it stayed at 596.
And it was a little lower than that for a bit, but
Okay.
it came down at one point. It was way up, and the complaint was that every department in town was charging a figure into that cost itself, and it got taken out. A piece of it got taken out. So that's kind of what we're looking at to make sure we know what we're doing, because we're supposed to set we can set an EDU rate twice a year, one early and one again in the fall. I've been on record as saying I refuse to vote for any EDU rate till I know what the costs are,
Exactly.
what everything is in place, because I don't think we're fair to the citizens of Wareham what we're doing. So that's why we're really looking at this as well.
Okay, very good.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you for coming in, and we look forward to hearing about the status of our sewer finances as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much all for your time.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Peacock. Yes.
I humbly ask for a couple of minutes of time underneath citizen participation. Reason being, I was at a medical appointment from the Brigham and Women's in the traffic, and I humbly request just a couple minutes of time to go.
What's this in reference to?
It's in reference to the Commission on Disabilities.
Schedule them. We can schedule them for an appointment. It's up to you.
Yeah. Come on up.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's supposed to. All right.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm Ken Barrows. I'm
Yeah.
from District 5. I'm on a disability commission, and there was a couple of things that had come up during one of our meetings that we just had, 6/17 at 6 p.m.
Well,
Just-
just so you know, Ken, we can't really discuss or deliberate anything as a board because we don't have it on the agenda.
Yes.
But if you'd like to articulate a couple of concerns, go right ahead.
What I like to, sir, as American with disabilities, my processing and some of my functions are impaired, okay? Just so you know, that the citizens of Wareham need to know, we no longer have a extension for the Commission on Disability. Do you realize that, or does anyone realize that?
You mean a phone extension?
That's correct, ma'am. And the liaison to the board attended the meeting with us at my request, and she humbly, and I respect you, ma'am, I truly respect you for assisting me with the process. It's hard for me to communicate, but the telephone number, we also don't have a place to store our records and our, I would say, our ADA programs. So that way there, we as a board, we can have access to it, because in the past, one of our members had an office that was co-joined with the Veterans Council.
May I
Yes.
May I suggest that I work with you and your new chairman to resolve some of these issues? The phone one, I won't fix that one, but
Yes.
let me work with you.
Oh, absolutely.
Would that
And-
be okay? Mr.
Yes,
Barrows?
ma'am, and it was just, and I apologize for the treatment that I just went through. There's traffic and so on, and I truly respect you giving me the time, sir.
No, we appreciate your concern, but going forward, Selectman Whiteside is going to be very involved.
Yes.
And she's there for exactly these kinds of concerns.
Good,
So
good.
you can simply let her know if she feels the need to get them before the whole board. She can ask for an agenda item. If she wants to try to help you herself through administration, she certainly can do that. And so It sounds like you two have already hit it off, and I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. I truly appreciate, and you do understand some of the problems that I have, and I truly appreciate it being a taxpayer and a resident of the town of Wareham.
Well, thank you for coming forward.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night. And I apologize, I meant to say good evening in the beginning.
That's okay. Okay. Next item, please.
We have a consent agenda. We have bills from the law office of Richard Bowen, statements for 320, 420, 520, and 620.
Move to,
$60,000 total.
Okay, 4 months' worth of invoices.
Correct.
move to pay them.
We-
We don't even need that, okay.
No, just make a motion to pay the invoices.
I just did. Make
just
a
did.
motion to pay the invoices as presented.
Second.
Anything on the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 300. You see Mr. Bowen is smiling.
He's going to buy some more rose bushes.
Have appointments for committees. We'll start off with Community Events Committee, Susan Ricky Sohn, to Community Events Committee for a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2016.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
Susan is not here, by the way.
This is for reappointment. She's currently the chair of that committee. Anything on the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Reappointment 300.
Next, I have the Board of Health. I'll make a motion to appoint Catherine Finney to the Board of Health as a associate member for the term to expire June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Finney is not here. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 300.
Make a motion to appoint Glenn Montero to the Board of Health as a full member for a term to expire June 30th, 2016.
Second.
Mr. Montero is here.
Yes, he is.
Would you like to come forward? You getting chilled over there?
Yeah, it's gonna.
Well, we're not up here, so maybe we should move the desk.
Yes, I'd like to be reappointed for the 3-year position. I've been on it for 2 years. I took over Dr. Gleason 2 years ago, and I really like being on the Board of Health and have a lot of experience because I've been 20 years with the health inspector and 20 years at the housing authority. So I'm just looking for your reappointment again so I can continue to do what I'm doing with the Board of Health.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate your service.
Okay?
Anything else? We have a motion, please.
Did.
You did?
And seconded already.
Wow. These guys are quick. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Thank you.
300. You're back on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Make a motion to appoint Robert Brady to the Board of Health as an associate member for a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Selectman Slavin and seconded by Selectman Whiteside. I don't see Mr. Brady in attendance, but I know he's interested in re-upping. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 300 reappointment. Just as a note on the Board of Health, going forward, they are going to have a greatly increased workload due to the nitrogen regulation they've passed and also the number of failing septic systems in the town. I had an opportunity to talk to Chairman DeFelice of the Board of Health recently, and he concurs that the workload is going to greatly increase. And it's quite possible that this fall, the town meeting will be asked to approve a change in the number of seats on the Board of Health from 3 to 5 to accommodate the additional workload. This isn't a matter of a building boom where people come in, they do perk tests, they file just pro forma requests for a Title V installation, and it's just a matter of making sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, it's rubber stamped and goes through. dealing with failed systems and the new nitrogen regulation that they are currently tasked with upholding and enforcing is going to require case-by-case hearings. There will be people appealing to try to save money because these new systems are not cheap. And so I agree with Chairman DeFelice that the workload is going to increase and that perhaps the makeup of that body needs to be increased as well. So just a note for the future. Next, please.
Next, I have Joseph J. Cardoza for appointment to the Board of Road Commissioners for a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2015.
Second.
Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 300.
We have in our packet for Bethany Gay, Library Board of Trustees, but I do not see that on the agenda unless I'm reading it wrong. Does anybody else have anything?
It is not on the agenda.
We'll have to hold on that because it's not been posted. I apologize to Bethany, but we'll have it on the next meeting on the 2nd of July. Give me just a minute to make a note. Okay, this one we can't sign. Make a motion to appoint Barbara Gomes Beach to the Council on Aging for a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2017. Mrs.
Second.
Gomes is here.
Yes, would you like to come up and speak for a minute? Good evening.
Good evening. That's on. How are you all?
It's good to see you.
Good
I'm
thing.
here. I'm here because I was asked to be here. You have questions for me or anything? I heard a rumor you all were looking for help.
Yes, we were.
Yes.
So,
And it's not a rumor, it's a fact.
okay.
Well, thank you for your interest in stepping up to do this. I know from your past work on, let's call it a community activism project, that you're very diligent, hardworking, and that you see things through until the end. And that's exactly the kind of person we're looking for on our town boards and commissions and committees. So
Okay.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I just want to thank you for basically taking your time to help the seniors in Wareham. We do have a real need there.
Well, I'm a senior, so I got a little insight into some of
Me
this
too.
stuff. Okay.
Just want to say that it is wonderful that somebody who has a resume that's longer than my arm is willing to help out the town. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm all set?
You're all set,
You are.
Barbara.
vote.
Okay.
You
All
just
right.
tomorrow you can go over to the selectman's office, get your paperwork, and get signed in.
Well, let's vote her in first.
Oh, I thought we did.
Oh,
No, we-
All in favor?
Aye. Now
I'm
she
ahead
is.
of
300. Now you're all set.
all right. Thanks.
Anybody else out there that we appointed tonight, please go to the selectman's office tomorrow, pick up their paperwork so they can get signed in. Make a motion to accept the executive session minutes of June 6, 2013, accept and hold.
Second.
Okay. Anything on the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 300.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
to make life easier, may I move my seat for the evening so that the things that need to be passed back and forth?
Sure.
I did shower at a Holiday Inn tonight.
No, it's not that.
Yep. We'll pause for a second.
You want to switch your seat? We should have done it on our own. Sorry about that.
Last time I got you got me sick.
That was free, though. Okay, we ready to go?
Next, please.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of June 6, 2013.
Second.
discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 300.
Things to be signed? Things to be signed.
He hasn't signed them yet, I don't think. Make a motion to accept the minutes of June 11th, 2013.
Second.
Anything on the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed,
Aye.
abstained, 300. Next, please.
Mr. Rose, you want to come up? We have before us the Dudley L. Brown Post 2846 VFW 4 Gibbs Ball Park Road, Onset, Mass. Here for 4 different days: July 6th from 1 to 9 p.m., July 13th from 1 to 9 p.m., July 20th from 1 to 9 p.m., July 28th from 12 to 7 p.m. for events to be held at the Onset VFW Pavilion. The pavilion is outside the main building. It requires a special one-day license, which they've applied for here. Stipulation: no alcoholic beverages to be consumed on town property. I'll make a motion to go ahead and accept and give them the one-day permits for the 4 days as described.
Second.
Okay, while you're up here, you want to tell us about these events?
Certainly, certainly. Good evening.
Good evening.
On the 6th of July, it's a it's going to be family reunion. On the 13th, it's a post event. On the 20th, it's another family reunion. And on the 28th, it's the Plymouth County Democratic League annual event.
We were there last year.
And that's
Anything else you want to say about the post? I mean, guys, obviously we're down for a little while, so any way you can promote yourself, go ahead.
We were down for a while. We're back up, and we're doing our best to put ourselves back together and make everyone happy.
Whatever we can do to help, we will. If you
Appreciate
have
it.
any announcements to come up, please send them up to us. We'll be glad to read them off every Tuesday, whatever's going on.
Yeah, if you've got
Appreciate
events,
that.
if you've got events down there that you'd like to publicize, you can get them to our office. And we, as you saw tonight, we do announcements at the start of every meeting, and that way you can promote them, get more people out.
Oh, that's good to
So-
hear. Thank you very much.
Yep, we look forward to hearing from you.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
sir.
Good night.
Thank you.
You have a great 4th if I don't see you. Okay, we have our usual sewer business, funding source for contract 2. We don't have all the members here, so my discussion on that was going to be to set up a Pacific single day for a workshop with the board and with Mr. Campina and probably the town administrator, just discuss the different possibilities of funding for that particular piece. So I'm going to put that off till July 9th, when we have a full board here.
Yeah, I would suggest that as well. That'll come back on the 9th. The other piece we need going forward, too, and it will be part of future agendas, is once we get the work on the EDU rates that we've commissioned back in hand, we will need to include that on the agendas as well, I think, as a recurring item, since it's such a significant change in the order of doing business, should we vote to adopt that.
Under any sewer business, Mr. Campina is not here, but he and I traveled to Boston this morning. First time I've been on the train in years. Was quite nice, actually. We went up to the Department of Public Utilities because we have 3 different groups that are involved with net metering, the DOER, and also there's an assurance group. It's quite confusing. I'm not going to get into details because it's not on the agenda, but what is on the sewer, Guy's facility, we thought we were going to have a problem about usage. We were basically informed about AC versus DC. which changed the capacity quite a bit for us. We found out also that we are actually number 0068 entity that's allowed to have 10 megawatts is the town of Wareham, and the Wareham Fire and Water District is also an entity which I believe is number 0086, and they also are allowed to have up to 10 megawatts, which solves a lot of problems for us. We got a lot of good information. We also found that there's a particular ASA form that we have to start initiating to fill out to make sure we qualify for the credits. So we're doing our due diligence this time as we make every step forward. So we've got everything pretty much in place. If it turns out that we have, the credits don't go against the actual usage, it goes against the dollars billed. So if the town has, say, $3 million in dollars billed for power, and the net metering credits that we have, say, cover $1 million, we can go out actually and buy more net metering credits to pay for that as well. There is no limit on what we can buy for credits, but as a host town, we're only allowed to have 10 megawatts as far as purchasing on a project as the host. So there's a lot of good information. There's a possibility that we can keep our electrical costs at a real minimum. That's all I have on that.
Okay, next item, please.
Next item is guidance to the town administrator for next year for budget.
I would roll this in with the next item B on the agenda, initial discussion, read the 2015 budget process. Just as a general remark, I've already had outreach from the FinCom on this. They would like to have a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen sometime next month after they have integrated their new members and reorganized their board. So I was thinking sometime around the middle of the month.
We actually have on the July 2nd date discussion of putting people in place for the FinCom and the school committee as well.
Yeah, I guess the initial meeting would be, well, I won't be here for the second, but anyway, I guess I will check the board's availability and also need to check and wait and see when the FinCom's available to meet. Typically in the summer, the FinCom only meets once a month. So to the extent that they're looking to do an extra meeting with us, it's very much appreciated, if it indeed is an extra meeting. And even if it's not, it's appreciated that they're initiated the outreach to us. As we found out during the budget process most recently, some of the deadlines we thought we had really weren't being met, and I don't think any of us really understood what some of those deadlines truly did mean. In essence, what we're looking to do in this coming fiscal year is to get as much of the budget set as we can, and the department requests into Mr. Sullivan before Thanksgiving, so that by December 15th he can come up with a proposed budget that reflects at least the needs of the town departments, and then going forward only requires tweaking as we get various numbers in from the state for local aid and receipts and this, that, and the other thing. If we get a jump on it early, there'll be a lot less uncertainty heading into town meeting. I hope we can avoid sort of the issues we had at this past town meeting, and so this is why we're initiating this process in the summer this year. We can't wait until the end of the fall to start doing this. It just doesn't work. Selectman Whiteside?
Yeah, the other thing that I think we really need to make sure that Mr. Sullivan and his department heads provide us with are the income side of all of the departments. That really ought to be part of the budgeting process, so that we don't have to go back and ask. Thank you.
Next up, we have discussion on whether we retain certain committees or not. The first one we'll do quickly is the Tremont Mill. It should be Master Plan Committee. That particular committee virtually stopped functioning when the previous Board of Selectmen, actually I think it was 1.5, changed some of the rules, and they lost 2 or 3 key members, and the committee actually stopped meeting. What we have right now is we have the Tremont Nail, the Master Plan Committee, was to advise the Board of Selectmen on the property itself about how to make it work and repairs, whatever else. Municipal maintenance actually took care of the repairs part of it, so there's really no reason for that part of it. The Wareham Historical Commission is my recommendation, basically takes care of the historical aspect of the facility as far as advising the Board of Selectmen, because as it is, we have final say in it no matter what. And as far as the economic development part, that should go to the CETA board and the CETA director, who are better geared to work on that part of it as well. It makes efficient use of things that are already in place instead of having redundancy, which we have at this point. So I'm going to recommend we sunset the Tremont Nail Master Plan Committee, which is formed by the Board of Selectmen as an advisory committee.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Selectman Slavin and seconded by Selectman Whiteside. Just by way of background, when was the last time this committee did meet?
The last time the committee met was 2 months before I was elected selectman.
And who was the chairman at that time?
I was.
And was there ever another chairman selected?
No.
So this committee truly is moribund and dead in the water then?
Yeah, it didn't have a quorum anymore.
Okay. Well, anything else on the question? All in favor on the motion to sunset? Aye. Opposed, abstained. This committee is dissolved 3-0-0.
Next, we have discussion on the Clean Water Committee. I believe they're here also.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Eddie Pasevich, and I'm the chairman of the Clean Water Committee. And I have George Hempel, who's a member, and Janet Jones, who's also a member of the Clean Water Committee.
Okay. Thank you for coming in.
We have, again, a situation where we have multiple people representing the same basic duties and responsibilities. Wareham has rejoined the Plymouth Carver Aquifer Committee. We have a Buzzards Bay Action Committee. We also have the Buzzards Bay Coalition, which really acts as a political entity as well as an advocate for Buzzards Bay, which handles a lot of things. Our Board of Health is there as far as our nitrogen issues and rules. So again, this is another committee which is advisory to the Board of Selectmen. And again, it's just a duplicate of process. So the question is whether or not it's worthwhile to keep them going because of what's available.
Just briefly, I've known Ed for a long time. I've known his passion and dedication to this issue for a long time. He served with my late mother as one of the delegates to the prior Plymouth Carver Aquifer Committee. He's done as much as anybody and probably more than anybody else in town to raise our consciousness about nitrogen. And regardless of our vote tonight, whatever that outcome is, we do appreciate that service and the work you've put in.
Thank you. Just a comment, if we may. We are the only committee that's dealing with water in this town, specifically and only. We worked very close with the Board of Health to develop the nitrogen regulations. We're currently working with them to amend the nitrogen regulations. We've provided resources to the Board of Selectmen, resulting in the analysis of the recent MEP report regarding the Wareham River, which was 180 pages that you got a synopsis for four pages. You also received an analysis regarding the, I forget, I sent it to the chairman, regarding analysis the committee did on another report for the town.
I think you would send something to Selectman Holmes. I think
Well, that was the original one, though. There was another one I sent to you just recently.
Okay, there was something on the MEP. I remember that.
That was the MEP report. There was another report that we did.
I'm
an
scratching my head,
analysis on.
too.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're getting older. We have been active and met regularly. I think we provide a service. We work closely with the coalition. I know Mr. Holmes made a recommendation sometime back a couple of months ago about not having this as a Board of Selectmen committee, but to bring it forward in the guise of a bylaw to establish it as a town committee permanently, which we would obviously be in favor of. If that's under consideration, we'd be happy as a committee to draw up something that we could add as a bylaw and create a Clean Water Committee as a permanent committee as part of the town. But just to add one thing, all the boards you talked about, they all come to us when they're discussing nitrogen. We are the go-to people for the nitrogen pollution in the water, whether it's fresh water, oceans, rivers, streams. They come to us for our expertise dealing with nitrogen pollution.
Well, with that in mind, Ed, again, regardless of what happens tonight, if they don't come to you, you're going to go to them. I know that. So that
yeah,
much is certainly true.
That's going to occur no matter what. But I would think that the town would show their interest and their support in trying to keep the water clean, especially the way it results in the impact on the beaches we have here in Wareham and the economic development and resources that are tied to the tourist industry that we have relative to our beaches. That's the main concern here, the nitrogen and its effects on the salt water and our beaches.
Anything else from the rest of the board? Selectman Whiteside?
Well, I guess I have a question. May I?
Yes.
Okay. You meet regularly, Mr. Pasevich?
Yes, once a month.
Okay, and you provide minutes?
Yes.
Okay. And you feel that you are contributing to the town's benefit?
Absolutely.
As a board, as an advisory committee, you all feel that?
Yes.
Then I would ask why we would sunset people who are actively doing their job. I mean, I don't mean to be rude to you, Mr. Slavin, but I'm wondering why you do have overlaps. It's clear, but if they're meeting regularly and they're an advisory committee, God bless them and buy them a Coke. I mean, I don't know. I can't understand why we would
It's okay.
sunset them.
The reason that we're looking at this is we already have a conservation agent that handles a lot of stuff. We have our fire and water district has a superintendent that handles the same issues. We have town departments that handle all the issues. We're trying to take and eliminate where we have repetition, overlap. This is an advisory board to the selectmen, which means they come to us and advise us on certain issues as it goes along. Mm-hmm. There has not been that case on this particular committee.
May I?
The history is not there.
Okay, so you're saying that there have not been advisory reports?
No. And there have been articles written for town meeting without asking us. Basically, it should have come through the board, which hasn't, and I can go into more detail if you want. But the bottom line is that it's an advisory committee and has not acted as an advisory committee.
Thank you.
And there are people in place that do the same work.
Thank you.
If I may comment.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Any of the bylaws that we brought to town meeting had to go through the Board of Selectmen in order to get put on the warrant. So the Board of Selectmen had the right to review anything that we provided to them and say yes or no, or not put it on the warrant. It was all given to the Board of Selectmen. That's what we're supposed to do, and that's what we did. All of the reports that we did and the analysis we did, I know which one I forgot, we brought to the board's attention regarding a significant source of nitrogen pollution, which was approximately an 80-page report dealing with a specific area in Wareham next to the Agawam River, which was a significant source of nitrogen pollution, and DEP is taking steps right now to correct it. We brought that to the report and the attention of the Board of Selectmen. So the bylaws that we introduced did go through the Board of Selectmen, or they wouldn't have been on the warrant.
I'm not going to sit there and go back and forth simply to say that before they even went on the warrant and actually was written into the warrant, they should have come before the Board of Selectmen to discuss whether the Board of Selectmen had interest in that coming forth or not. It wasn't done that way. And it hasn't been done with other boards, any of the zoning boards either, as far as this particular committee goes. Unless you've got a favorable action, you basically ignore them. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, why don't we... Well, on the...
I guess, may I make a suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
I want to play chicken.
Chicken's good.
I think that it is a controversial issue. I think I would like to discuss, I'd like to meet with, I'd like to talk about this more, and I also think that, that there may be relationships with the two people who aren't here tonight. I just,
Not a problem.
because it's controversial, I think that we should put it off until there's a full board.
I agree. I have no problem with it.
Okay, well,
Because I don't think, well, I don't think, no.
The only comment I would make is that we have 2 members that have to be renewed. They put their papers in, and they're expired June 30th. We have another individual who applied, was interviewed, and the board never took a vote on. And unless we get those people, we can't meet because we don't have a quorum.
we can get this on the agenda for July 9th. And then, you know, I don't want to put your members through the, you know, the rigmarole of an appointment, and then if the board decides to go in a different direction, that's the only reason I would hold off till July 9th, Ed.
Okay.
So I would put you back on the agenda for July 9th.
Okay.
That will give Selectman Whiteside some time to delve further into things.
I appreciate that. Thank
And
you.
also get the other 2 members here and have a full discussion with the full board.
Fine. And if there's any questions or any information is needed, by all means, you have my name, email, telephone number.
Yep.
Give me a call. Be happy to assist.
Yes, I would expect any of the members to reach out and just find out this information on their own.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item, please.
We have item D, discussion and vote whether to form a wind power committee. This was a request for Selectman Tropiano. Unfortunately, he's not here tonight.
We'll put it off.
Same comment.
We actually had back, I think it was 3 years ago, a thing called an energy committee that was discussed with former town administrator, Mr. Andrews. I've got notes and paperwork here, and when Patrick comes in, I think we might want to suggest an energy committee which doesn't just look at wind power, it looks at solar power, dam power, taking the existing dams and seeing if we can reconstitute them for electrical power as well. I've got notes from the state and different ways we can do things, so I'll be turning this over to Selectman Tropiano when he comes in. And we'll put it back on the agenda again for either the 9th or the 16th.
Yep.
Yep.
Next, we have the school bus bid award.
For this one, I'll turn it over to Mr. Sullivan.
You should all have in your packets the actual bid award. And the value of the bus was put together by the same person that did the previous valuations and also did the tractor as well. You have them here. So,
Musical chairs.
so realistically going through this needs to, the reason for this being done today is we want to have it done for this fiscal year. And this is the last opportunity to vote on it. We went through the proper procurement channels. We went through the proper procurement channels, and this is the result.
What year is this bus?
I actually don't. I put all my copies in the Selectmen packets. So if you,
This is
if
in
you
1999.
No, but that's the trade-in is in
The trade-in's in
1999.
if you look, it's right on the page.
Oh, yeah, 2006. Yep, there it is. So we're getting 7 years newer for 20 grand, basically, 21,000, 20
Yeah.
grand. All right. So a 1999 bus is only worth $1,000.
At that level.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be thinking about having our mechanics strip it out and sell the parts?
That's probably what they're getting, actually, Peter.
That's the value of it.
I
That
believe
one.
the chassis is rotted out, et cetera.
Yeah.
That
I was
one's
thinking
not
that's a blown
They
roadworthy.
motor, too.
don't. They just don't last.
So this is just something that's moldering away in a field somewhere, basically.
Not yet.
We have 5 of them actually on the side lot,
Yeah.
like that.
If you came back in 50 years, it wouldn't be worth it as an antique. So.
Careful, let's not get our historic commission interested in this. Well,
We just-
anything?
We just require a vote on this. The money's already been appropriated through town meeting,
Correct.
and it's under the capital dollar amount anyway, so it doesn't really affect that as well.
That's true.
Okay.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase of the, looks like Freightliner / Thomas hydraulic brake bus with 50,000 miles on it. The cost of the vehicle is $20,000 less the trade-in of $1,000. And the trade-in's the 1999 Thomas Type D diesel with $116,957. The $1,000 triggers or doesn't trigger a bid process for that?
We got the valuation for it, so I don't believe we need to go through the bid for that value.
Scrap.
But that was actually in the RFP.
Okay. I'm
Second.
done.
Okay, motion made by Selectman Slavin and seconded by Selectman Whiteside. Anything else on the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, 300.
Thank you.
Town planner is not here. I guess I was involved with this particular project I was involved with the planning board actually back a year ago, putting together a draft for the signed bylaw. So I have knowledge of all of it. It was based off of Falmouth's extensive bylaw. We took that as a base and worked off that rather than reinvent the complete wheel. We made modifications where necessary to fit Wareham better. It covers almost all the issues that we currently have that people keep complaining about as well. I don't know if anybody has gone through it enough to have any questions on it. We need to have a hearing through the planning board on this, and it's important that the Board of Selectmen goes through and basically votes their approval of the draft as written.
This is already on the agenda for July 2nd for...
The master plan is on July 2nd.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Never mind.
We'll have a town planner here, just not the sign bylaw.
What I would ask is that we set a date in July where the board has time to go through all of it, because we had some questions last time, and the questions that were asked, the answers were right in the draft itself. So what I'm looking for is people to go through, if there's something they don't understand or there's something not covered, to have comments on it. And then we'll have at least 1 or 2 public hearings as well for the same reason.
I complained to Mr. Slavin quite a long time reading every word of this twice. I think it is a comprehensive draft bylaw, and the questions that I had I was able to answer by going back and looking at the document itself. I think it's a well-drawn document.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll get it on the agenda probably for the middle of the month.
Yep.
Next, please.
Just a reminder, the town planner who works in Rochester is available the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays of the month, not the 2nd and 4th. So when we schedule, we need to schedule that way.
First and third.
1st and 3rd. Any other town business not reasonably anticipated 48 hours prior? I have one issue here. We received from one of the Wareham Housing Authority elected members, Robert Paulitis, basically forwarding us requests that I believe there is one member no longer present, another one is stepping down, the elected members, and the charter and bylaws require that the Board of Selectmen and the remaining members of the Wareham Housing Authority join at a meeting which we can set and both can post for, and vote for new members. We have 3 applications right now for that particular position. I think they usually go to the Wareham Housing Authority to be vetted whether they qualify. There's something they actually send into the state. But we do have 3 names that have been submitted to us. So I would say that we need to schedule this on the agenda. We're not going to discuss it tonight, but we need to get this on an agenda item soon so they can actually meet. They have serious quorum issues. They get 2. If they're lucky, they can get 3 maybe. And that's an area where there's a lot of things need to be done there. So I would ask the chairman to schedule that and let them know when it's going to be. That's the letter I got today.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all I have on that.
Do you have any 48-hour business?
No.
Just briefly, perhaps, I think we
missed
we missed one announcement here. The Cranberry Blossom Festival is going to be this Saturday, June 29th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. out at Taihonet Village, 80 Makepeace. Featured will be cranberry blossom bog tours, paddle boat rides, a nature walk, kids activities, live entertainment. You can learn about bees, local vendors, cookbook release ceremony, and a Fun 107 live broadcast. You can go to tyhonet.com for more information. The admission is free, parking is free, the bog tour is $5, and boat rides are $5. So sounds like a fun day out on the bogs.
Town Administrator's report.
Thank you.
Second time's the charm.
The first thing I'd like to start off with is something that happened actually at the end of May, and it's Lieutenant John Walsek was awarded the 2013 Massachusetts Emergency Manager of the Year Award by the Northeast States Emergency Consortium. It's a major award, and it's really a compliment to the town. We didn't have an emergency management plan before 2012, which really tells you the Herculean effort he's put forward on it. The MEMA local coordinator, Doug Ford, actually said, Lieutenant Walsek is one of the finest public safety officials that I've ever worked with. His comprehensive emergency management plan is among the best in the country. I'd like to congratulate John on his well-deserved award. And the reason for my laughter is I can't believe I've not brought this up before now. So I apologize to Lieutenant Walsek, and I would love to see if we could bring him forward to put something together and really recognize what he's done.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Could you put that on the agenda?
The next item is we know that Mr. Gifford will be retiring as of the 28th of this month. It's a loss to the town. The knowledge that he's carrying with him is really, it's a wealth of it. And every time I've ever called him and asked him something, and I give just the briefest of description, he knows right where it is, what's going on with it, and can give me the answer. So stepping into his shoes, I will be, upon Mr. Gifford's recommendation as well, appointing Mr. David Menard as the interim municipal maintenance director. He has over 17 years with the department, and in 1999 became one of the foremen. So he's got some excellent knowledge. He's the one that's conducted our bids and has really worked hard, and I think it's going to be a great marriage. And we will be posting for the position in July. So he will serve as the interim. The next item is Mr. Iafredi, the building commissioner, has started, and as of Monday, and we look forward to working with him. So
He's tall.
he is a tall man.
Well, thank you for quickly filling that position. And just one final time, I'd like to thank Dave Moore for the excellent job he did coming in to a difficult situation, a lot of things to be cleaned up, and he's done a great job getting things back to where they need to be, which will assure a more orderly transition to our new person. Thank you, David.
And if I may, don't be surprised if for the next few weeks you see Mr. Moore around still. We're keeping him for a transition time, and I think it's going to help smooth things out.
Yeah. Something we didn't do
Makes
last
a lot
time.
of sense.
One of the, and I'm sorry I should have said this, one of the last things is you'll notice at the beaches that have the parking stickers, the senior work-off workers are not baking in the sun anymore. It's sticking people out in the sun for hours on end was not having any sort of really shade for them or anything wasn't the best idea. They were game and worked really hard for us, but it's a severe issue. People are going in there and they're saying, well, what's going to happen? Well, if you buy a ticket, you'll be fine, or if you have one of the stickers, you'll be fine. If you do not and you park there, our public safety officials are going through and actively ticketing. So it's much cheaper to buy the sticker than it is to get the ticket. Thank you.
Reports from the board? Other committees?
No, you heard from the individuals that I met with of the day of the picnic, so I don't have any other.
Okay.
You have anything?
First off, I'd like to also, Derek can fill in, Marlene, who's been working in the Cedar office for quite a while, is also retiring this week. It's a good week for that. Another very valuable employee that's been very diligent for a long period of time, and I'd like to thank her very much for her time and service and her dedication to the job. I've never heard her complain once in the whole time I've been in town hall, which is pretty unusual in life. Never had a bad word to say about anybody also, which is even another nice plus. So thank you, Marlene. The planning board met last night and basically signed off on Brown's Liquors, so they should be getting their CO hopefully by the end of this week, so they can move in for July 1st and take care of that issue. I mentioned about the visits to the state for the two different departments, DOER, which is Department of Energy Resources, and DPU. I'll give you more information on that. Another issue that's become a real problem in town that we thought we were coming in with something simple to do, which was save a little money by the issuance of not plowing streets that were private ways. All of a sudden, it's like I'm going to use an analogy, it's like an onion. We took a layer off, a very thin layer. All of a sudden, that layer came off. We found out we never adopted a certain state statute, which created another problem. I hope everybody realizes that all those private ways that we have, which is probably 11 out of the 21 pages, we don't get credit for Chapter 90 money. It's not part of the funding that we get back at all. So we've lost both ways. One, we've plowed a lot of those roads over the years, but never got any money back through the Chapter 90 system. So that was a rude awakening. The other piece of the whole thing is that now we have a lot of homeowners that don't understand why they're on a private way, because they thought the town would have accepted the road and the process. So what I've done is with the chairman's permission, I've asked Charlie Rowley to come on the 2nd of July to the board meeting to sit with us and go through all the history, because Mr. Rowley and his father before him basically did all the engineering work and layouts of the maps of the town of Wareham. Basically between his dad, which is no longer with him, but Charlie basically has everything possible, and every time we go to a town meeting and we have a zoning article, Charlie gets up and tells us where we're wrong, and not a lot of times, he's always right, and unfortunately the zoning article fails. So rather than do things the hard way, we're going to basically not make the same mistakes we always make. We're going to ask a lot of questions and get answers before we go forward. The idea is that hopefully through the end of July, we will have enough information to figure out how we move forward on what was a simple process, which now is a major problem for a lot of residents. There's a lot of misunderstandings. It's not that simple to get a road accepted, because we had subdivision rules come in at a certain date and time, and the subdivisions mean all the homeowners in that street own the street, or else the person who developed the subdivision held ownership of that street unless they turned it over to the homeowner association. So this is all a quagmire of legal issues. And basically, if you had 10 homeowners on a street and say 8 of them wanted to have the street accepted and say 2 didn't, they can't do it. Every homeowner technically owns to the center line of each on their side of the property as well. So they're responsible for repairs, maintenance of the street as it is, which a lot of them don't realize. So this is a real issue. We're going to do our best to help the citizens out on this, to figure out how we can do it. We can't promise we're going to end up plowing anybody, but we're going to try and get an answer, because we've basically, it's like the Pandora's box is the best thing I can do. We opened it up, and now we've got to fix it and close it. Thank you.
Yeah, I concur with that. And I would just add that there was never any desire on the part of the board to stop plowing roads that have been plowed for decades. This was something that came to our attention. We ran through it with council, and it's an unfortunate fact of life that we shouldn't have been doing this all these years. So what we have to do going forward is figure out how to get back to the service we were able to provide before, but this time to actually provide it legally. So that's what this is all about. This will be a topic of discussion, I would anticipate, at pretty much every meeting this summer, probably right into the fall. I know it's possible for town meeting to vote to accept the plowing of private ways. That's something we've gotten into. There's also the street acceptance issue. Young Mr. Rowley, and I call him that only because his father is older Mr. Rowley, will be appearing before the board next week, as Selectman Slavin said, to talk about our process for accepting private ways as public ways. I think he may have some thoughts on how to streamline that process, which would require probably a bylaw change. But nonetheless, these are all things that have to be brought out onto the table so that we can fix this problem. And we need to move on it quickly since, you know, even though it's 90-something degrees out now, winter's going to be upon us a lot quicker than we think. So I thank Selectman Slavin for his outreach and getting the ball rolling here.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll
Point of
remove my
order.
motion, Jerry. Go ahead. That's supposed to. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jerry. Well,
when you have a person that was hired, went to foreman, I'm just saying, Frank Burgomaster, that knows everything about the town, about the road, about the building, bids and everything. I mean, I'm just a layperson. I have nothing against man, but he's a mechanic. That's a heck of a reputation when he has a foreman that's been here all these years, knows everything about the town.
Well, I
Well-
appreciate it, and he has run his own business, family business as well, which I think speaks highly. Anybody that's ever run a successful business knows how hard it is to manage it. And again, he's been with the town for 17 years, so he's not somebody right off the turnip truck.
I'm not, I said I don't have nothing against the man. How long has Burgomaster been here?
Well, these are all, again, this is an interim appointment. It's not, the position hasn't been posted yet. For full-time, the things you bring up are considerations. I would anticipate that would be considered at the time people who apply for it on a permanent basis would submit their credentials. So for now, it's an interim appointment. That's all I can tell you. And it's within Mr. Sullivan's. No, fair enough.
I'm just saying a mechanic taking over where you've got a foreman that's been here longer than 17 years. It knows everything.
Okay. Thanks for your input.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Selectman Slavin and seconded by Selectman Whiteside. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 3-0-0. Have a good night, folks.